Hi, welcome to the Pat Riot Show. It's your host, Michael Clair, and today on my show I have one of our favorite guests ever, Dr. Frank GALBRAITH. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing fine.
Awesome. Hey, I want to, before we get into a lot of the questions that I have for you, I want people to know a little bit about your background and where you were born and raised, and how you got to know so many people in this life.
Okay. That could be a long story. It also could be short.
That's okay. Go ahead.
All right. My father graduated from Yale as a lawyer about 1916. He went to work for Woodrow Wilson, and his boss was a fellow by the name of Herbert Hoover. And Hoover went on to end up in the State Department with my dad right behind him. And Dad was quite fluent in German, and he ended up heading the U.S. delegation in Germany, but not just Germany, all of Europe. And I came into the world in Leipzig, Germany.
Wow.
And I was there for a few years, and Mr. Roosevelt decided that Mr. Hitler was getting out of control, and I sat at dinner one night, and my sister said, "Dad says we're moving tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, we are? Yeah. Where are we going?" "We're moving to Columbus, Ohio." And that's what we did. But in the meantime, as a boy, about 4 years old, I started meeting people, and the etiquette was such that my father wanted me to address the guests that came to our table. I always sat at the dinner table. That's the way we work things. Yeah. And my first really important person was a very impressive, overstuffed gentleman, and I was to address him as Admiral. So I did. And I'm not sure, but a few days later, I wanted to know, and I asked my father, well, he's an admiral. What nation is his navy? I found out there was no navy, no admiral, or no nation. He was a member of a club, like a sailing or yacht club. And but that's simple to say that at my father's dinner table, I was always to be polite, and do I meet Mr. Ambassador or just Mr. Smith or whoever? There were never any Mr. Smiths, I can assure you that, or professor or doctor and so forth. And so as I was growing up, I was meeting lots of people like that. Well, when we finally came to the United States, that continued. Later on, when he became a senator from Ohio, my general rule, and I was a little older, I sat at his left at the dinner table, and one of the rules was that when his guests, he would never accept a dinner gift invitation from a lobbyist or anybody. They always ate at our dinner table. And believe you me, some of these people were not happy to have this smart kid sitting right across from them. And Dad would eat European style, so he would entreat the guest with his knife being pointed at the guest and the fork being pointed towards me. And after a while of conversation, of which I was supposed to be listening, he would say, "Oh, is that cut of roast beef not satisfactory?" And then he would call for our maid, "Hattie, would you come in and get a better piece?" and so forth. And in the meantime, "Would you do me a favor, sir? Would you explain to my son what you're telling me while I'm enjoying my meal?" And this, of course, is very insulting. So he had to talk to me. And we did this. And I cannot tell you how many times I suffered through this. But I got a good education. And for quite a few years I did this. And this went on through college. So when I also came to town, and I was also at that point in high school as well, I worked as a page. And but anyway, I did this for years. So I met all kinds of people. Sometimes senators, sometimes House members, but lobbyists, and you can't imagine how many doctors, admirals, generals, colonels, And the same thing. So dinner would be coming to an end. We would always have dessert in the library. And guess who got to go to the library? Me. And then Dad would, after a while, excuse him, take the guest to the door, and come back. And then I would give him my report. And this was my training. You have no idea how many people I met that way. But then as a page, I met an awful lot of people in Washington, D.C. An awful lot.
I'm sure.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I also became, and just a little side note before we go on, I did not know when I was given my first page job to deliver from a House member an article to the Supreme Court. I mean, just a job. So I walked over to the Supreme Court. When I got to the Supreme Court, they have their own police force. And so as I approached the court, the policeman stopped me, and he looked at my badge, and he addressed me as the junior senator from Ohio. I said, what are you talking about?
Dad, right?
Okay, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. And then he took me up, and they unlocked the gate at that time, and then to the door, and I got addressed again by that one. And then he took me to the clerk of the Supreme Court, who addressed me. So I spoke to Mr. Silverstein about this, and he said, well, that's an honor. It's only happened once or twice that we have a name like this. You are the son and the junior. And then he took me upstairs, and it was just lunchtime, and several of the justices were there having their lunch. And I got introduced again the same way. And they were all very pleasant, and I then delivered my package to Justice so-and-so, Justice Hugo Black, and was open, and I got to sit and wait while he completed. He wanted to compose an answer and wait, and that was that. Well, that's how you meet a lot of people. I met all the justices. So in answer to people wanting to know, I got an incredible education that way. End of discussion as to why I know lots of people. But when I was in the Navy, I was an aide to the Chief of Naval Operations. Believe you me, I got to know an awful lot more. Simple as that. And then as a teacher, as a professor, again, a lot of people pass through my classes who always let me know, dear professor, I have just been made senior vice president or something. And of course, one of those is a very well-known person nowadays. I was following his track. And I've gotten a couple of extremely well-known individuals. It's like any of us. Some of our students will brag. And then, of course, when it comes time to buy bricks and mortar for the university is very quick to let us know that they know our help to encourage people to plop some money down. So that's the answer to that. 6, we happened to be in Cairo in the night, and the next morning I'm sitting on the balcony at the American Hotel with a German prince, and I met another prince that day. His name was Dambar, and we became lifelong friends. He became the Saudi ambassador to the United Nations, and later when Obama became president, he stepped down to become the ambassador to the United States. Lasted 1 year. Why? Because Obama treated them so poorly, he asked to be relieved. And for the last 7 years, there was no ambassador to the United States, only a lady secretary. We became, he died last year. We remained good friends all these years.
Wow. So how did you get into the more, I don't want to say clandestine, but how did you get into that, where you were doing these missions and these secret things, and how did you get sucked into that?
In the Navy, I managed to, because of some skills I had, not physical skills, found myself being trained and involved in what became clandestine, if you want. You used the term, I didn't. Activities. And I had some skills which were described a little bit in the thing I read that I was pretty good at, and they were very much interested in. I will say this: we got to a point where the establishment wanted me to do certain things, and I found reasons to fail at their charges. I would not do it.
Yeah.
Because I worked with people that would just as soon kill me as anybody else, and I was not interested. But even though after all that, as I retired and so forth, and certain people rose to very significant positions in our government, they found me out and asked me to consider doing some other things for which I had some rather unusual training and skills in protocol at high levels, and I did.
Can you go into any of that?
I had the opportunity when I delivered a letter to a sultan in the Middle East, and I was told that the result of a meeting of 67 Arab leaders accomplished an end, and that if it had been handled through routine governmental procedures, it would never have happened.
Okay.
Otherwise, a roundabout, independent way of diplomacy was handled. I already knew what had happened. And they know they can't take you and try and manage something to their benefit because of something you're doing. You don't do that. That happened to Carter Page. His name and his reputation he was accused of being a Russian spy. And all the problems that have happened to General Flynn, and I know quite a bit of the problems that happened with the general that Obama washed out of the CIA, and I was asked to look at some things there, but I declined. I didn't want to get involved in things like that. It's not my cup of tea. It simply isn't. And there's too many other things like that. It's just simply not something you do. I was asked to look at some political bigwigs wanted to put a friend into the consul generalship in Dubai. And all it boiled down to was person had some capabilities in oil interests, and the oil companies with several of the sheiks over there, and you have to know how the government doesn't work or responsibly, and about how some of the sheiks sit down and have tea and shake hands and they make things happen. But the American companies aren't getting their share of the oil. And so some people wanted me to do some research on this and see if I could maybe help this particular individual. What it boiled down to, it was all the wrong person for all the wrong reasons to get into that chair. And I had to tell him that.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't happen. Well, of course, these people were not happy at all. And that's exactly what I did. I am very familiar with the spiritual activities among some of the prayer circles that exist in the White House. And I am able to track some of the things that go on in activities with regard to certain people. And a couple of the members of the cabinet are very close personal friends of mine. And we talk at great length about the court systems that we have here in the United States and how corrupt they are in some respects and how good they are in others.
Sure.
And I had the opportunity, one of our cabinet members and I go back 40 years, having sat on a committee at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Medical Center many years ago. And then I worked with him because I chaired a international symposium on healthcare for many, many years. And he helped me immensely in attracting prominent individuals in the healthcare community. In turn, Dr. Enthoven, who who composed and wrote and was the architect of Ronald Reagan's healthcare works, and actually spoke at the opening symposium the night Reagan was actually elected president, and we opened that night in San Francisco. That was very significant because the day before that we had held a symposium in Philadelphia, but it wasn't about healthcare. It was about something else, dealing with the spiritual aspects of the heavenly courts, which people don't even know exist. Well, they're very real. And I know you know a little bit about it because I sent you something about it recently.
I'm in the middle of the book. It's a hard read.
It is a hard read. And it's something that people don't even know exists. Well, the courts of heaven are very, very real. And in this day and age, it's more relevant than it has ever been. And this is not really the venue that we would go into that, except to say that recently I had the opportunity to attend a hearing.
Wow.
And that's not an easy thing to do. And to hear the prosecution was rather interesting. I will only say this, that the judgment was rendered and the guilty was named. 6 hours later, Michael Flynn was decided that he wasn't guilty. And a couple other things like that happened that next day, all consistent with the judgment. And since then, 2 or 3 other things have happened. And there will be more. Some indictments will be coming down. And we're beginning to see things happen in our world, in the secular world, that are a result of the judgments in the courts of heaven. And I will say no more. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Yes, I do.
But I have known about this all my life. My father was very good about telling me about these things. He gave me the opportunity to go to Yale like my grandfather and my great-grandfather, to study the law. I didn't do that. I became an engineer, and studied physics. It wasn't my cup of tea. I had all these opportunities, but I didn't do it. But he always taught me these other things. It took me, I would say, 70 years before it gelled.
What are the things that you look at with wonder and still look forward to learning? And you've done so many things, Doc. It's hard for me to comprehend everything that you've experienced, but what is it that gets you up in the morning and says, hey, I want to learn about this? Or what do you still wonder about?
It's not what I do when I get up in the morning, it's what I do when I'm going to sleep.
Okay. Can you go into that?
Well, it's what I sort of have on my agenda and what I am meditating about when I'm preparing to go to sleep, because that will set me up into sometimes what I might happen to do in my slumber that I don't want to do because I can't control it. I have many things I want to do. Like last night, I contemplated what I'm going to be doing right now. I had rehearsed my thoughts about this program. I also had sort of reminisced a little bit about what I was writing in my book. And so I'm weighing all these things. So I think about all this. And so sometimes I dream about this. And when I dream about this, some interesting things often happen. I find myself off on their worlds, viewing. And sometimes those are visitations physically, something I've done a lot of all my life. And I'm not alone doing these things. A lot of people do this kind of thing. And that's how the German scientists, according to their own writings, discovered the base on the Mars base, and how they found the link that got them in 1937 to Mars. That a couple of German scientists actually physically found themselves in a building on Mars doing this kind of thing. But they found themselves on the portal on Mars and were able to get back to Earth through the portal.
Wow.
It's a matter of documentation. Well, there's all kinds of portals, and they aren't necessarily all electronic. There are those, you open a door, the German one that got them to Mars, you simply open the door, went into a room, shut the door, and when you open the door at the other side of the room, you were in Mars. That portal still exists.
Is it in Germany?
Yes, it is.
Interesting.
And
So-
the United States government, the United States military uses it. We captured it at the end of World War II.
So here's a good question. If we had that, why did we bother with Apollo and Mercury and Gemini?
Very simply, Hitler didn't know about this. This wasn't Nazi. This was German scientists that hid it from Hitler. They gave it to the United States. Guess what? The scientists that brought it over from Peenemünde, and it ended up in Area 51. I think I've told you the story about how Area 51 got its name. Okay. It was largely a secret. People didn't even know we had it. Now, we got lots of things going on that the left hand and the right hand don't even talk to each other about. The fact that we've got a base on Mars, people don't know about. We didn't build it. It's several 100,000 years old. There's a base on Mars. There's a base on the moon that's several 100,000 years old also. And our astronauts were met by other astronauts and were told, go away and don't come back. But we did. And the funny thing is, we haven't been able to find who those other astronauts were.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. But do we tell everybody about this? No.
Yeah.
And why is our space age development curtailed the way it has? And why has Elon, has he done what he has? We don't need these billions of dollars in space age stuff. We've already got the technology.
Yeah.
We didn't develop that technology.
That was handed down, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We're out of time for this segment, and I'd like to have you come back and let's get into your books, because I really want to start covering that now that we know who you are and people can kind of get a feel for who you are and where you've been. I think now it'll make more sense when they hear the next episode.
Okay.
Will you come back?
Oh, sure I will.
Okay.
Let me just say one other thing. I've traveled all over this world. I've had the good fortune of being in the Navy and traveled, but my family too. I've traveled all over the world, and I've seen an awful lot.
I know you have. Stick around. We'll be right back on the Pat Riot Show with the next episode, where we're going to cover a lot of stuff about the books.
I'm
Thanks,
not going
Pat.
anywhere.